Hello everyone, welcome to another part. In this part, I will show you how to properly reseal cases. It is important to prepare them as on my previous video. Here we can see that I'm using the recommended rebound sealant, and general rules are that engine should be the engine with the gearbox installed should be on the position like you can see on the video. This is because we want to avoid any oil going into the surface which will seal cases together. So both cases must be free from oil, correctly cleaned. And now the thick layer of sealant must be put in all surfaces which will join together. The thing is that it is important to put around a right amount of sealant. We don't want ha, to have it too much because in this way some leftovers can stick out from our cases outside of the case. It will not be any harmful, but generally aesthetically it won't be the best. And we don't want to stick it out inside of the engine because of that we can, for example, fill our oil filter, which is on the pump of oil pump. So we don't want to do that as well. So generally the layer has to be a thin line, which but thick enough to seal it. Because if the line is not thick enough after case joining, the surface might not be sealed. Somewhere I wrote that some people are using the technique to put the sealant on first surface and propagate it by using some brush and do the same on the second surface. It might work, but I don't recommend it. To be honest, I prefer to put a small thick line uh, and just to have this sealant squeeze by itself. We need to remember that cases are not ideal. They might have uh, some scratches, slight scratches, because if there is a big scratch, we need to be aware that it might do some trouble. But generally, there might be not 100% straight, and some minimal gaps can be seen. So if the layer from both sides is too thin, it will just not seal it correctly. Right now I'm having some problems with my my tube. Okay, I'm doing it without gloves. You should always use gloves when working with sealant. I just feel much more comfortable doing it without gloves, but generally, if you if you don't use gloves and your fingers will touch sealant, it will be very hard to remove it easily. Okay, I have some serious problems with that, but hopefully it will work in a few seconds. The line doesn't have to be uh, like perfect, okay? If there is any gap, you can just correct it, but just bear in mind that it can't be too thick. To be honest, I think it is better to have the line too thick rather than too thin. But better not to test it, just to seal it. This one tube of the strap bond is very, um, let's say, I don't know the word, but we can do a lot of engines with it. This is like fifth or sixth engine I'm doing, and look how much stuff is left in this tube. So generally, if you want to save some money, I don't recommend it doing by buying a cheaper. Sorry about my head, you can't see anything. Uh, Buying cheaper sealant. I think this one is very okay. Now I'm angry. Something happened. Something is blocking probably inside. I need to put it out or something. You don't need to hurry that much because the sealant it takes some time to harden. Uh, I'm not sure how much, but as you can see, I'm not that in hurry because it's still wet and it just takes some time to make it uh, fully dry. Now it should work better. The types of cases can be different. There are three types of cases. There are small, small differences, but generally the way to do is pretty the same. You just need to put the sealant on all sticking out surfaces, which will stick to another surface on the second half of case. It is also important during the case's preparation to get rid of all old sealant from sockets for screws, because during the seal process, when we join cases, some sealant will go into the holes for screws. It is not that a big problem during the reseal, but if we do the second one and we won't remove the old sealant, it might be a problem because this force needed to turn in bolts with a proper newtonometers will be not accurate. So first one is done, now the second part. No, you can't see anything, but hopefully I will move it a little bit. I must admit to something that unfortunately I had to resplit the engine after a few hours because when I watched this movie before, I realized that I forgot to put the uh, the pin next to the O-ring, which I will show you in a second. To be honest, I think the engine could work fine without it, but I didn't want to risk and I just resplitted the engine. It is just the cost of a little bit of sealant and time, so it's not that bad. You will see in a second what I meant. This is probably because I had a lot of on my head and I couldn't fully, think about engine rebuild. I had to think about other stuff. In this area, I think some guy called Carl in UK, which have a good opinions from all customers, invented some gasket which he puts here in this area. I don't, I have never spotted any problem with this area, but maybe if he does that, maybe it helps somehow. To me, to be honest, in my opinion, when we put a good amount of sealant, it is not necessary to put any gasket in this area. Okay, now when the sealant is in place, this is very important to do a double check. So go around all edges and check if there is a nice layer of, of sealant everywhere needed. If it is, just put away sealant and it is time to join cases. Here is the very important O-ring, and this is the stuff which I forgot to mention to you. That in here there has to be a pin which holds O-ring in place and sets the cases in the right position. Okay, here there was a washer which I just moved. Don't forget to install this washer on the edge of gear. So right now we are just putting the engine together, sorry, cases together. Be gentle. And of course, don't forget to apply some oil on the bushes on this side of case. Okay, so cases are joined right now. Of course, we need to screw them to the proper position. We have two types of screws. Uh, few of them are thinner, few of them are thicker. You understand that when you disassemble engine, you just mark the uh, play thicker places in which they should go in cases. I just doing it in all the time. So when I take out the thicker screw, I just put a dot from permanent marker, or dot or line next to this hole, so I know where to put the thicker screws. I don't have to remind you that all screws has to be correctly cleaned and de-oiled, so there can't be any oil on them. This is because we don't want them to be too greasy. I don't know how to say it. Okay, and it is a good practice to use a glue to all bolts which have to join cases. This is not some permanent glue. It is just a regular medium glue which should be used in this for our purpose. You need to remember that there is several of screws on this side and one screw on the other side, just I believe between both cylinders. As you can see, cylinders are not fully pushed into the engine because it is not that important at this stage. Uh, they should be maybe not loose, but not that tight. So even if the cases are joined together, we should be able to push cylinders inside to flood the area where heads comes. As you can see, I'm using some regular spanner, but I'm not using any um, any hard force, just to prime it. Then I will use a proper newtonometer key to set a proper newtonometer value. I think it was 12 for thicker and 10 for thinners, but as usually I'm just uh, you know expecting from you to check this in torque values from documentation, which is online and accessible for everyone. As you can see on the side of cases, there is some black sealant visible, so we can be sure that layer was not too thin. Hopefully it was not too thick as well. Some of you might be interested what tools I use. I found the Jones Way tools pretty good value for money. There are some better tools, of course, but generally for my purposes, I find them very attractive and very good actually. They keeping their performance for a few years. So I'm just sticking to this company for all precise tools I have. Actually, those are mainly the dynamometers keys. Now smaller bolts, well, they look bigger, but generally they have a smaller diameter. So here is, I think it was 10 newton meters, but you should better check it. I don't want to use too much force because we don't want to, break the thread inside of case. As you can see here, I didn't go fully with 10 newton meters. I think if I try to do that, the thread might snap. So I just avoided that, and there is a glue inside, so it's not gonna go anywhere, I believe. Okay, and one very important stuff, that engine has to stay in this position for I'm not sure how much, but leave it for 24 hours just to have just to let sealant do its job. Here is the last screw, I think, which is not the last one, but I thought I'm going to install the screw on the other side. Okay, so I left this screw on the other side. I think just in a few seconds. It's important to install this screw for oil from gearbox because it seals cases as well. And last screw.